Hey there, everybody. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Snipes, and today we're going to talk about how cognitive distortions actually contribute to violence. Cognitive distortions are errors in our thinking that make us feel like we are more powerful or less powerful than we really are. It's important to examine how certain cognitive distortions can make us feel like we are unsafe. And when we're unsafe, what happens? We go into fight or flee, which contributes to acting out. It contributes to more impulsivity in people, which can, if left to fester, can result in verbal aggression or even, unfortunately, physical aggression. So let's just look at some examples of those cognitive distortions. Personalization. If somebody does something and you assume they were doing it because they were trying to insult you, they were trying to reject you, or they were being intentionally unkind to you, then that may prompt you to feel threatened, to feel defensive. I get that. Personalization is often incorrect. So it's important to look and say, what are 3 other explanations for why this person may have done it besides my belief that they were trying to be aggressive or threatening toward me? All or nothing thinking is another one of those cognitive distortions that can contribute to fear, and it can really amplify fear if you think that every person that is like this is a threat to me, or nobody out there is ever safe, or nobody out there can be trusted, then you're going to feel stressed and unsafe and disempowered most of the time, which is going to trigger that fight or flight reaction. It's important to step back if you are using all or nothing type terms and ask yourself, what are some exceptions? What are some exceptions to people like this who are safe, who are kind, who are compassionate? What are exceptions to people being untrustworthy? Do I know anybody in my life who is trustworthy? And chances are you probably know 1 or 2 people. The availability heuristic. This is another one that when there is something that is emotionally salient, is what they call it, but emotionally impactful, it makes it more prominent in our mind. So if somebody does something to you that is unpleasant or nasty, or somebody does something to somebody else that's unpleasant or nasty, and you know about it, even if that person normally is a very nice person, you may start seeing them as threatening because what they did was so awful. And it's important to step back. One of the things we often talk about in leadership meetings, when we do annual evaluations with people, it's important not to be tricked by this availability heuristic. The things that somebody's done over the past year that were, really big mistakes they made, and focus only on that. We need to step back and look at the whole picture. What have they done over the whole year, not just those 2 or 3 big mistakes that they made? So going back to people, we need to step back and not overgeneralize and assume that people of a certain types of people are going to be this way. And that includes like children, where you're assuming that all children are going to be completely rowdy and rambunctious. Well, that may not be true. Ultimately, we need to keep coming back to what are the facts in the current context for and against the belief that I am unsafe and I am powerless. And a lot of the times we're going to find out that it's not true. Now, unfortunately, social media can really tend to amplify cognitive distortions by presenting information that's grouped. So it does feel like this may be ever present, ever threatening, overwhelming. It is important to evaluate social media, whoever you're following, for its accuracy and its accuracy in context. What's going on overseas is horrible. It's awful. It's threatening. And if you lived there, you would be terrified. And, that's not a cognitive distortion. However, where you live in your corner of the world, what are the facts for and against your belief that you are unsafe? And if you feel unsafe, how can you address it without violence? How can you address it so you feel safe and empowered without being aggressive and causing someone else to feel unsafe and likely lash out back? There are a lot of other mind reading. One more. Mind reading and jumping to conclusions kind of go hand in hand. When you assume you know what somebody's thinking, then you're likely going to set yourself up for making a lot of inaccurate assumptions. Mind reading is when you assume that because somebody is of this religion or of this political affiliation or of this whatever, because they have that affiliation, they are going to think this way. They are going to do this thing. And that completely ignores the individual's ability to think and choose on their own. So it's important not to overgeneralize. It's important not to assume that you know what somebody is going to do or jump to conclusions. If somebody comes in the office and they're just in a god-awful mood, and you assume that they are angry with you and they are a threat to you in some way, you're going to react a lot differently than if you notice in the moment, hey, this person is really wound up. Anger is one of those responses to feeling unsafe and powerless. Okay, so this person feels unsafe and powerless. I don't know what about, but it doesn't necessarily, personalization, have to do with me. So instead of assuming I know what this person wants, needs, or is going to do, it's important for me to step back and say, what information do I have in context? And when I don't have all the information, it's important for me to actually get it, ask, do the research in order to make an informed decision. So as I started to say, there are a lot of other cognitive distortions, but what I want to point out to you in this video is the fact that cognitive distortions often, you think you are being more powerful, but a lot of times they make you feel unsafe and powerless in your environment. Always go back to what are the facts for and against my belief in context, and if there is a threat, what steps can I take in order to feel safer and more empowered without infringing on anyone else's boundaries?